So I know that you started playing viola in middle school, right? Is that right?
I was sixth grade. I was 12 years old.
Mhm.
Just started on the viola.
What made you decide you wanted to pursue music?
Um, I usually refer back to like when I was it was the summer before my 10th grade year, and I was doing my first summer festival where it was centered around chamber music.
Mhm.
And a teacher of my very first private teacher, his name is David Dillard, he requested that I do this. He's a second violinist with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra from Atlanta. So I grew up under that umbrella, and I gotta tell you, it was transformational. Playing in a string quartet was my first experience. I was 15. You
Mhm.
know, I had seen much of life, but being able to like play music with three other people and have like this sort of like conversation. Because when you're in orchestra, yeah, you're one of like 11, 10 violas, right? So you're not yourself. When
Mhm.
you're in a quartet, you're bringing yourself to a conversation where three other people are bringing themselves, and then you delegate to create this holistic, complete unit together, non-verbally.
Yeah.
Right? It was at that moment that I realized this is what I was truly meant to do. If I could just do this, I don't need a lot of money. I don't need a lot of things. I just need this in my life. And that was when I was like, okay,
That's
I
so.
want to.
And it's interesting that you had that experience in the summer because I do find that as a high school orchestra teacher, so many orchestra programs, there is never space for chamber playing and there's never space for small group playing. And you could easily, I just heard a story the other day about a program close by me where a kid went up to the student teacher and said, I don't know how to read music and I'm afraid to tell my teacher. And this was, their junior year of high school, but they've been able to sit in the back since third grade and no one really paid attention to them. So
That's
hearing,
the way. That's what it's like.
yeah,
That's what it's
yeah.
like.
So hearing that it was a small group experience for you, I think is really cool. It's a good reminder for me that that is powerful for every student to have a voice in a small
Oh,
group.
for sure. And I think that's huge because it's like responsibility too. You have to be accountable. You have to play your part. Nobody else is playing your part. You can't rely on anybody.
Yeah.
And when you have a chamber coach, they can work with you. And honestly, now that I think about it, now that I really think about it, that was probably, especially when it comes to my personal playing, when you have a chamber coach and they work with you on your line and give you ideas, that's where you actually are fed
Mm.
the seeds of like how to create your own ideas musically. How do you phrase this? It's where I learned how to phrase. It's where I learned how to really think about my scales differently. It's how I've thought about how to learn how to look at a score and think and apply my music theory. These were all in chamber coachings. These were all things that were outside of my private teacher, and it was usually like a cellist. Like a cellist really taught me how to do spiccato. It wasn't my viola teacher. Like they refined it, but the person who unlocked my idea of how to do spiccato was from a cellist.
That's so
So it doesn't
yeah.
even play my instrument. And what other way are you going to get that kind of individualized feedback from somebody outside of yourself? Honestly, all of my best chamber coaches were cellists. And the things that I think about and the way I think about music, they were all formed by these cellists.
That's
That's so interesting. So it continued. So when I went into college, I really kind of applied to more summer festivals that were chamber focused rather than orchestral focused. I did do Brevard, and that was great. But chamber music, and it's funny, this conversation's really helping me remember. It's it's so important. I'm just disheartened by the level of players that I've found here in LA. And it's not a classical place.
Yep.
It's and so I think that's why I'm unhappy. Because when I was in New York, I was doing a lot of chamber readings with great players, but
Yeah.
it is such a hard thing to find like three people that you work well with, that they're responsible, they practice their parts, they show up on time,
Mhm.
and they are willing to take some of the entrepreneurial reins,
Yeah.
like being the accountant.
Sure.
If my apex of my career, I would feel like I'm at my apex if I have a chamber group like that. And we did classical, but we also did other stuff. We also did like funk and like hip hop and jazz stuff. Like I would be so happy, you know.
Prevalent. So I'm just curious with you, like what's given you the freedom to kind of break outside of classical music and pursue all sorts of styles?
You know, it's so funny because that sort of mentality we're talking about continued with me until about last year.
Wow.
My birthday, my 27th birthday, I had some friends over who were they were like classically trained, but they did other stuff. And they were improving. They were like doing some covers, just like figuring it out, some pop songs. They were just doing it. And then we would pass around solos. And whenever it got to me, I would have this like fear and this breakdown. And then whatever I played was really bad. I was just playing random notes. And I realized in that moment that I had this deep fear of improvisation. Because in the classical realm, the whole pedagogical approach is that there is a right and there is a wrong, right? And it develops this sense of fear in being wrong. I don't want to be wrong. I don't want this solo that I do to be wrong. I got a nugget of truth at Juilliard from my teachers because they are phenomenal. They are definitely diamonds in the rough, where they said, it's not wrong. It's just unconvincing. What you did wasn't wrong, but it wasn't optimal and I wasn't convinced. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Like, what was your thought process? And then when you're like, I don't know, I kind of copied it from a recording. Okay, then let's break it down then. Because you need to have a reason for everything you do. And I was like, okay. That was the first seed, but still I was reading music. But now, since I've been out here in LA and I was just listening to a jazz lesson I had back in March from a friend of mine, because I'm like trying to practice jazz and practice my scales. I'm just doing work. I'm trying to get my chops better, which is I think is a lifelong goal. Not something that they didn't tell us in schools. Like, just keep going. Like, so what if you can't do your scales now? Like, yeah, you have a master's, but like keep going. Like, don't stop. Because it's never going to go away. You're going to need it, right? So that's what I'm starting to do. But since when I had that traumatic experience of just being unable to improv, I was like, okay, dude, it's going to be okay. Let's work on that. Let's lean into it. And when you said that a lot of these students, you know, when they get an instrument in their hands, they want to play that song that they love. I think that we squelch that in a way in our traditional pedagogy. And one way that I've broken out gradually, and it was unbeknownst to me, was I was like trying to play video game covers and I put them on the internet. And I did these JHM jams with my boy Ken Kubota. And it actually really started getting me out of this weird mindset. We were at Juilliard studying Schumann and Scriabin and Stravinsky and all these crazy like educational behemoths, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's like the high class, but after class, we didn't want to practice that stuff. We were bored. We liked listening to pop music. We liked jazz. We liked funk. And so we got together for Instagram. And it's Ken's idea, but he was like, yeah, come through. Let's do a pop song. And I was like, okay, I do that anyway on YouTube. Let's do it on Instagram. And we started this whole JHM Jams, Juilliard House Mafia.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we did that with our boy Nathan Chan and a bunch of other Juilliard people. And it just started that. It was another moment of planting those seeds while I was at Juilliard. But now, like, I'm just so over this whole. I think I just had to slowly get out of the brainwashing of like classical is the best and the only way to do this instrument, right? And once I got out of that, I started seeing classical and appreciating it way more as a style. and seeing other forms of music, not as lesser than, but just different ways to think about music. And learning those ways actually can make you a better classical player because it gives you another lens to look at a problem and problem solve it from. Whereas if you're only in the classical scope, you only know how to attack problems from this angle. But if you have a jazz perspective, maybe you have a more rhythmic perspective and a feeling, right? And you look at that problem from over here. Oh, yeah, of course it makes sense to rubato because it's a pattern repeating over and over and over. And you want to say it differently every time. See, very different perspective, but equally valuable in that old style. So now that I've gotten over that fear and started learning different styles, I've realized, oh, this is where we need to go anyway if we want to keep getting better.
It's so crazy to hear you say that because when I look at all of your work, you just are oozing creativity and seem so unafraid of being creative. So I find that really encouraging, and I find that encouraging for my students and other young people who are playing music to know that it's okay to feel intimidated by creative.
Oh, I'm so intimidated. Look, I have this book on my desk right now. You can't see it because of my thing, but it's the only guitar book you'll ever need. And I'm like trying to learn guitar. Like I'm overwhelmed by the things I don't know how to do, but I'm just every day just trying to figure it out.
Do you have, I mean, you talked a little bit about private teachers. Do you have any influential like K-12 music teachers that you feel like sort of shaped you or?
Yeah, probably the most influential teacher I've ever had in my life, Amanda Sellers at the time, but her last name is Moran now. She was the middle school orchestra teacher, and she came to our school when I was in 5th grade and played SpongeBob, Addams Family, and Pink Panther, and I was sold. I was like, okay,
that's amazing.
Sign me up, teach. Show me the money. And I forget that that's all it takes for kids.
Yep.
I forget. I think about it way too. How do I inspire the kids? Just do stuff that they've seen before, but on your instrument, and then they're sold, right? So she did that to me, got me in that trance, and she pretty much took me through not knowing how to read alto clef to then being an all-state orchestra in 8th grade. So she really, like, after school, I'd be like, hey, Ms. Moran, can you just show me how to do this thing? And she would really kind of give me these tips after school.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so she really changed my life.
Do you wish there was something that you had in K-12, your music education, that you didn't have growing up?
Better understanding of music theory, because I didn't really get that concept until college. And by then I'd already had like a few ideas of music solidified, but I think kind of like a language, learning that early, just learning what this chord, this feeling sounds like and being able to put words to it would have definitely helped me instead of having to reverse engineer. Okay, this is a major minor or a dominant 7 chord. Okay, this is what it sounds like in relation to a major chord, a major 7 chord. I wish I had that.
So I actually reached out on the orchestra forums I'm a part of to see if anyone had questions for you.
Yes.
I have a couple of questions.
Please, yes.
I'm going to ask you his name's Joshua Michael Garber. He also said he wanted to thank you for your Avengers cover.
Oh.
He said that's what gets students in his orchestra to play viola. So.
Oh, wow. What?
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Really cool. And he said, what would you want for the future of public school orchestra programs? That's a big question. So
that is, what would I want for the future of it? I would want a more vibrant ecosystem of funding, I guess, to get people like me in those classes to talk to the kids and show them that there are other ways that you can do music very viably, entrepreneurially, that is outside of the orchestra realm, because you have all these kids that are serious about it and that love it. They only feel like the only way. I remember when I was growing up, like all of the programs that I was a part of, their goal was to get me in a conservatory, to get me in an orchestra. And I was like, I don't know. I like video game music too. I like jazz. Like I kind of think I want to do some of that too. I kind of like singing, but that was squeezed out of me. You know what I mean? No. Focus.
Yeah.
But I think having people like me is important, especially people like Tina Guo, or people like my friend Katie Flute, who also makes flute videos on YouTube. I think there's a vibrant ecosystem of budding entrepreneurs that can give a lot of educational value, and also like the educational value is these kids can have a career in the future, and they don't have to worry about 400 people auditioning for 2 seats in an orchestra. Like it just doesn't make sense. And so the biggest hurdle that I see is I have a fee that I charge, and many orchestras just cannot afford it. And I think there's so many people like me out there that can do it, that would be incredible at it. So I think what I would want for the future of public school systems is to have better funding so that they can get musical entrepreneurs on a regular basis in these classrooms. First of all, so you teachers can get a little bit of a break. Maybe one day having orchestra actually means symphonic orchestra, even in middle school. You know what I mean? Get them started really early playing with trumpets and stuff, and flutes, and being able to play some of these masterworks. I think even if it doesn't sound good, because it won't, but just like having them try it and like push and grow and start seeing the seeds of that, the beauty and the importance of this art even earlier, I think that would be great. Chamber music in public schools.
I like that you're like philosophically, you're bringing up a point which I talked about in the beginning, which is there's a lack of connection between school music and music beyond the classroom. And I mean, that's the whole purpose of this interview series, but are we just training kids to be really good school musicians, or are we training them to have rich musical lives for their entire lives? So that even if they're not playing in, the Philadelphia Orchestra, they are still able to make music in a way that is fulfilling to them, whether it be for a job or not. And I do think I've had students who see like playing the viola is just something I do in school, and it's something I do when music is in front of me. And so trying to break down those barriers that, no, this is a way to express yourself that can be translated into all different settings. But yeah,
that's
like
scary.
You doing that is huge.
It's scary to teach that and have to talk to kids about that. And you know what's so funny is this mentality that you're talking about, like, hey, cello's just a thing I do for money. I just show up. If there's music, cool, I'll do it. There are a lot of people that lock in that for their entire lives. I gig with a lot of them where, they just show up and they play the music and they can do it. It's what they went to school for. It's my skill set. Like I have yet to go to a studio session, even since I moved to New York, when I started getting this recording type work. I've never been out of my depth ever when it comes to recording. I've never gotten, like, I've had some really hard recordings where I've had to really sweat, but I've never gotten anything where I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's the easiest thing to attain, is just this ability to be a replicating machine. The hardest thing to obtain is figuring out what you want to say. And there's only so much you can do when you have a bunch of people to teach at once.
This is another question.
Yeah, please.
Marvin Garduno, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He says, how do you encourage kids to create content and deal with criticism? So I guess in his string orchestra, he's trying to get his kids to do more where they're putting stuff online that they're doing. But some of them want to do it, but they're afraid of getting negative feedback.
Well, I also say, and as a proponent of people who should put content out there, as I've evolved on this perspective, and as I've seen social media grow, and as I've had a greater understanding with it on both the producer and the consumer side, I will say that if you don't want to put it in, I used to be like, everybody should do it, but now I'm kind of like, maybe not. Like if you're not sure of yourself, don't do it.
Mhm.
Like, because the problem with the internet is that hurt people hurt people.
Mhm.
And if you go out and you try to experiment and it's not your best, but you try to put something out there, that's got to be your number one thing. It shouldn't be for feedback. It shouldn't be for anything else. It should be just a snapshot of your own development in that time. And I think that's beautiful. But there are people out there that are afraid to do it, and they're so afraid that they hate you for doing it. And so they're going to say and point out the thing that you already know, that you're already aware of. You're already, it's not the most in tune singing I've ever done. They'll let you know. They'll tell you, ooh, terribly out of tune. And also, if it's a kid,
Mhm.
and you're sitting here telling a kid that they sound bad, what type of person are you? That's a kid. That's a person trying to figure it out. I think we're all trying to figure out, but that's a child.
Yeah.
And you're being mean to a child on the internet? Like, what? How broken are you? Like, what? Do you need help? You need love in your
Yeah.
life when you're that type of person. So I think,
Comment on everyone's angry comments on YouTube. You need some love.
do you want a hug? And that's usually what I do. I either apologize that they didn't enjoy it, because like it's my intent for them to enjoy it. And if they didn't enjoy it, man, I didn't hit the mark. I apologize for wasting your time, right? You're not going to get that back. But on the other hand, if it really hurts, I'm like, man, after this comment, I need a hug. Can I get a hug? Like, that hurt.
Yeah.
And just calling out, man, that was pretty hurtful. Why did you say that? Why do you feel that way? You know, and usually I found too that people will be like, that was really mean. I was having a bad day. I'm
Wow.
sorry. I didn't even think you'd see it. There are going to be people that are going to be mean no matter what. And the moment you accept that, the easier it'll be, like, to do your thing.
I have one more written question for you.
Please, bring 'em.
You have time. I
Bring 'em.
appreciate your time so much. Just advice for, I've been asking this to everyone. Advice do you have for someone trying to make it? And I think make it is very subjective and it kind of depends on what they're trying to do. But thinking of you and this idea of being a classically trained musician, but then also diversifying yourself into different spheres of music making. What are your biggest pieces of advice?
So I would say for the first step is like, be patient. Your definition of making it isn't going to remain static. I don't feel like I've made it. But if I like look back at like my perspective as a 20-year-old, if I looked at myself now, I'd be like, yeah, he made it. I would see that, right? And so I think that the perspective always changes. And if you go on a growth mindset and try to divorce yourself of this idea of making it, you'll be able to maintain happiness. Because like at least for me, I've been battling, and I'm kind of really getting out of this depression, thank goodness. But I had like gone to Juilliard. I had my master's degree. I was gigging in New York. I was doing recordings. I had played with like people that I looked up to. I was playing on recordings that I'd always wanted to. I was achieving so many dreams and goals in close succession and then I find the last one was like 100,000 followers on Instagram and getting verified. And when all of that happened, I was like, okay, I guess I gotta pay off my student loans. But then it's just like the whole rest of my life was ahead of me, and I didn't really know what I wanted because I didn't want an orchestra job. And honestly, I see a lot of people with the same depression reflected in their eyes when they get that job, and then they're still there 25 years later.
Yeah.
Or 30 years later, 40, 50 years later.
You have this idea of what making it will feel like, and you assume it will feel like wholeness all the time.
Oh, it'll feel like wholeness, fulfillment. It'll feel like happiness. Happiness is the journey.
Right.
Happiness is waking up every single day and practicing. Like I used to think that, and I don't practice as much as I used to. And I think my happiness is directly linked to my practice. If I'm practicing, it means I care enough that I'm trying to get better. And that's the journey. That's what makes me happy. It's just that ever that patience across time. So I think that's the first step, is the patience. And then the second step is trying to keep having bigger, hopefully unachievable goals, or just outside of reach. Because if you look at people like Tom Brady, what is that guy gonna do? You know what I mean? He's done everything. Life is so much more than that, and it's about connection, and it's about giving back. And that's where I'm like trying to figure out, how do I give back? Like, how do I make this world a little bit better? Because I played with Kanye the other weekend. I played on the debut of his opera. It was weird, but if you would have told 12-year-old Drew that he'd be on stage with Kanye West, I would have been like, you're crazy. I played with Alicia Keys earlier this year. It's been a weird, crazy year. And I've only been here for a year in LA. I know things are going to be really great. I'm feeling very confident. And like, the fact that you wanted to speak to me means that I've been doing the right thing, having different steps, and giving yourself these timelines. I gave myself 10 years after I got my first degree. Okay, if this doesn't work out, if I'm still struggling after 10 years and like really hustling for 10 years, then it's just not meant to be. And I'm going to reconsider. Or I'll know, okay, we're almost there, keep going. But be patient enough for that long. Do the 10 years. Do a 3-year goal. Where you want to be in 3 years. And then just write it down. And then reverse engineer what is required to be there. Let's say you want to be playing on recording gigs. Okay. Who hires people for that? Oh, you don't know? Okay, find people who know. Okay, you found those people. How do you showcase what you do to them? Play with them. Invite them over. Like, collaborate with them. Make a video. Or just do your work super well. Take every single crappy gig that you can. Be so prepared, play unbelievably well, show up early, be friendly, do all of the things to really show people that you care, and that this is a business and this is a job, and you want to put your whole life into it. And then you'll start meeting the right contacts and just meet people. And if you do that continually for 10 years, you'll definitely be in a place, if you've done your homework, if you've set the goals, if you've reverse engineered them and gone through the steps, if you just do that, or being a nice person, you'll definitely have some movement in your career.